Welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast. This is Jeff Mitchell. I believe leaders must be anticipatory to chart a path forward. We can either be proactive and move forward, or sit back and be reactive and risk falling behind. Wayfinders lead. The NCAA Pathway Program is designed to incubate and inspire the next generation of executives in our profession. I am grateful for my pathway experience and encourage others to explore their own opportunity in the NCAA Pathway Program.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown, and welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast, where we highlight executive and organizational leadership. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at 1Q Leadership. We are joined today by Randale Richmond. Randale is the Director of Athletics at Kent State. Greetings, Randale. Thanks for joining us.
For sure. Happy to be here, always.
Leslie Satchel. Leslie is a good friend of mine, and also she is the Executive Director of Stretch. Leslie, tell us a little bit about what Stretch is.
All right, so Stretch, if we think about stretching in general, I'll give you an analogy. If you do yoga for 6 months and you get really loose and flexible and competent in your skills, if you stop doing it for 6 months, you will get tight again, right? And so the interview process or communicating your value internally or externally, you have to practice that on a regular basis to stay flexible and to be effective and efficient in how you do it. And so we found our sweet spot with coaches and athletic community because sometimes people get jobs based on relationships. That happens for a lot of people. So you could be successful and have a long time career, but have never really had a real interview, a real interview. And so there's a lot of assumptions made about what you can or could communicate. And our job is to just help people do that better than they had before.
Which is interesting. The reason why I wanted to have you on, Randale, is roughly 2 years in as the athletics director. So culture starts being built when you stepped in the door, but culture being built is kind of not a short-term thing, right? It's a long-term thing. So that's something you're working on, worked on, you're doing there, take on the high-energy personality that you have at Kent State. There's this aspect of developing culture with coaches where some of them understand how important it is, but it has changed.
Yeah.
And the evolution of it was almost immediate when you start talking about the pandemic and the transfer portal.
That's right.
And then you also talk about NIL and tampering and people, all those kind of things. So I wonder about that aspect of culture on your staff, but then also when you talk about coaching the coaches and being the leader of the department in that aspect.
Mm-hmm. So it's constant. Right? You can't abdicate your leadership. You can't abdicate culture building either. And it's every day. It's modeled by behaviors, what you say, what you do, what you praise, what you allow. You endorse, right? So each and every day we came in a year ago and we set the vision, right? So what's the job of a leader? I say the job of a leader is SAM. Set the mission and vision for the organization, allocate the resources, and then motivate and inspire. All right. Now, we did this true growth thing. That's where I got that from. So as we're out here setting the mission and vision, like that gives us a true north. Graduate student athletes boldly prepare for life after sport and win championships. Everybody in the organization, that's what we're focused on each and every day. But then it becomes, well, what does that truly mean? And how do we go about that? Well, you got to have a guiding principle. So any decision that we ever make is going to be student-centered, coach-led, and administrator-supported. Now, those are all good words and good theories, but until we share a definition and share examples of exactly what those things are, then people won't be able to repeat them over and over and over again. So when we talk about being administrator supported, if there's examples that happen within our administrators or our staff supporting our coaches, well, then we acknowledge those. We talk about them at all department meetings. There'll be some type of text to go out to our leadership team so then they can model those behaviors with the people who they oversee. Because leadership and culture isn't what happens when you're in a room. It happens when you're not in that room as the leader, right? So if they understand, they being our leaders, understand and we share a definition of what we mean by a core value of family, what we mean by student-centered. And then all of a sudden it's like, no, this is what that means. And now we can hold each other accountable as leaders within the department. But it's my job to push that each and every day. It's my job to acknowledge that. It's my job to reward that. And it's my job if we don't have, I'm talking about being coach-led, if we don't have extraordinary leaders, I tell our administrators, that's my job, right? If you're going to support them, keep supporting. If something is going awry, that's my job to change out that coach if they aren't extraordinary leaders. If we have that system, our student athletes have an amazing student athlete experience. Have an amazing student athlete experience, you'll be retained. Be retained, you become juniors and seniors. You look at any team you've ever seen, you win championships with juniors and seniors. graduate student athletes boldly prepare for life after sport and win championships. We do that by following our guiding principle, which helps us establish culture.
Yeah. I think about what Leslie said in terms of describing stretch.
Yeah.
Recent football coach hire, right?
Yeah.
Which, as an athletic director, right?
Yes, big one, right?
Raise money and hire coaches. Right?
That's where it's at. Personnel, baby.
Right.
Yeah.
But the football coach is important, right? And you think about the things you said, core values. You think about coach-led. I mean, tell me again.
Student-centered,
coach-led, administrator supported,
yeah.
right? You think about those things, and then you think about the values you have, and then you sit down with a coach for an interview or for the interview process.
Yeah.
At what point do you realize whether or not this person's values match up with yours as a person and with yours as a department and school?
Yeah, it's alignment, right? So when we look at what's the reason you even have athletics on a college campus, we're the only model in the entire world that has this connected, right? It's to move forward the mission and vision of the university. So that's the number one thing, it becomes alignment. Kent State is a student-centered access to higher education and then graduation institution. That's who Kent State is. I happen to have a similar philosophy. So when people talk about fit, I'm bringing that to something that already fits within the university. So as we're here, the president's going to be involved in the search to a certain degree. It's our job to bring a profile, a why to that profile, and then that's that person's involvement. And then we're looking for a coach who meets that fit, who has the same type of background, the same type of purpose, the same type of why, right? So as we're going through a process, for me, I realize that emotions get involved. So I set a profile before we get to the actual process. And then that way, whenever we're getting intoxicated by a certain candidate, the question becomes, do they fit your profile? If they don't fit your profile, when emotions were involved, you went through a process to identify what works here at Kent State. So now that you're in it, stick to your profile, stick to what you've gone out for. So when we were looking for Kenny Burns, when we were looking for our next head coach, Kenny Burns met a lot of those things. I'll go for a quick second here. So we looked at what's worked at Kent State. It hasn't had a long history of winning, but the 2 out of the last 3 coaches have won pretty big, right? So what were the characteristics? Number one, these people were extraordinary energy people. You know, they command presence when they start out. Number 2, they had this idea of belief. We can win here. And that permeated not only within them, the coaching staff, student athletes, but the campus as well. Number 3, they had this level of accountability. They held people accountable to a high degree. And then you look at the MAC ties and cold weather. Kenny has been involved in all those places. So it ultimately comes into who can be a CEO of a program, who can be a leader, and who has a transcendent why. And that's what matches, and that's that alignment.
That's how it worked,
Yeah, I was just thinking about, we talked a little bit about the difference between leader and coach, right? There's a line between the two. And how their leadership skills show up sometimes aren't aligned to what you wanted to have happen. Mm-hmm. And now with NIL and transfer portal and social media and things, you see coaches are getting exposed, right? Where you thought they were kind of aligned, but then somebody had a camera and showed them in a meeting or in a bar or something, and you see these things come out. It's just busting up culture, really. So how do you manage, I guess, dealing with those things and how people may personally figure out how to still succeed within the system, knowing that it's not aligned to your values? So student-centered would be difficult. Right.
I don't think so, and here's why.
Okay.
I'm a Cleveland Browns fan, but I really do appreciate Mike Tomlin.
Okay.
And William Mary, another 757 type of guy there. That's right. But the standard's the standard.
Okay.
You know, the culture isn't dictated by the outside noise, isn't dictated by outside things that take place. Transfer portal, NIL deals. That's not what drives your culture. Those things will always be transactional things. I believe in transformational leadership. I believe in relational leadership. Anybody who we're going to have on our staff, who we're going to elevate to a leadership role, that's going to be who they are as well. It doesn't mean that you don't sprinkle in some transactions here or there, but your core and your foundation needs to be relational. It needs to be transformational, because it's not, it is fleeting, and anything that's fleeting doesn't yield consistent success. So when I look at all those things that are taking place, we're going to have an NIL solution. We have one. We have the Flash's Nest, right? You know, I mean, that's our NIL solutions, a partnership with Open Doors. But that's not what we talk about at the very beginning when we're recruiting student athletes. We talk about how we're a family at Kent State. Well, how can you have family in this transactional world? That's what the world really is, right? And you know the real relationships based off of the relationship. So what I'll say is, like, when we recruit a student athlete, we talk about, hey, if we have 120 staff members, we have 30 people who are either former student athletes at Kent State, were GAs at Kent State, or came back. Like they started here as a student, then they come back. They boomerang. We call it the flash array. They boomerang back because we are a family, and we talk about what it means. So we'll have an example that we didn't have enough workers for our basketball games last year. So we had coaches who were out there taking tickets. And I'm at the all department meeting, I'm showing that as this is what we mean by the core value of family. That starts to permeate throughout everything that you have with your student athletes. And they, when they're building their team and they're going to the recruiting space, because at some point in time, people are going to always look for substance. You're going to always look for substance. You can't have everything of empty calories and think you're building a strong body. You're going to leave some meat and potatoes, something that really matters.
But there's pressure to have McDonald's, right?
Yeah, that's a momentary transaction, though.
Yeah.
It's not always going to be all, I call it like fast food rap. I listen to my, Most Def, but I also have my Gucci Mane.
Right.
You sprinkle it in. So it's the foundation is transformational, relational. You're going to have some microtransactions in there, but that can't be your foundation.
Yeah, I just find it a challenge given the generation and what instant gratification that they like, and even being competitive amongst themselves, right? I think I want to be a part of a family, but I see my teammate over here went to this school and was able to get this deal with this a lot of money. It just feels like the pressure of that is going to challenge values and culture a bit. And so I'm just wondering how as you anticipate what pressure that may put on your program, what do you have in place to kind of solve for that?
Yeah, so we'll educate on that. But instead of going in that space, we took Alston opportunity, and we have something called a Ready Flash program. FLASH is an acronym, Ready for Life After Sport Holistically. I just talked about that being a part of our mission. So we took that, we said, listen, we don't want to just give people money and have it be a transaction. So we are going to defer half of the Alston distribution until graduation. Why? Because our mission, to graduate student athletes boldly prepare for life after sport and win championships. The Ready Flash program helps to be boldly prepared for life after sport, because the second half that you'll get is attached to you going through our student athlete development program. So you got to go through our financial literacy programming. You got to go through our NIL and branding programming. You got to go through our leadership academy programming. So the first 1,500, if you're retained at Kent State, you're not in the transfer portal, you're eligible. That first 15 comes from that semester. If you go through your student athlete development programming, that other 15 is deferred until you graduate. Now, why is that important for us? Because that's what our mission and goal is. Now, if you've been at Kent State for 4 years, you have a nest egg. Say you get a job and it's in California, but it's your entry-level job. They're not covering your travel fees. They're not covering your moving expenses. Now you have money to be able to do that. Say you want a gap year. You never get the opportunity to study abroad when you're a student athlete. Now maybe that's what you want to use that for. Say you want to start a GA-ship, right? You have transitional funding for it, but it meets our purpose, which is higher than just athletics, right?
Let me ask you this question here, similar to what Leslie is asking about. I played with, and I wasn't a star athlete, but I was someone on the team who didn't see value in anything that the athletic department was presenting. Now, of course, this was 20-some years ago, the 90s, where they weren't presenting a whole lot.
No,
but
life skills was
right,
not student athlete development.
But there were athletes where it was like, this is not the guy you want reading to the kids, right? And there's still athletes that this is not the guy you want, right? And so some of them don't care about that. Money is a good motivator, though. So I wonder about those kind of athletes where even that kind of staff member, assistant coach, staffer, upon entering, that you believe that they fit along the values, but then again, some people make mistakes. Some people choose to do something that doesn't fit into the values, and we all know that that's going to happen, right? We put
human beings.
Exactly. We put the foundational values in place, create the culture around those values, and hope that everybody stays aligned. But when they don't, is what we have to prepare for. So I wonder about preparing specifically for those types of things that may not, somebody does something that may not fit. Do you give them the chance? Do you keep them on? Do you,
Well, that's what I was talking about, pressure to compete with other programs. Because at the end of the day, if your players don't perform, you don't win, you're not going to be here, right? And they're doing things to get competitive advantage that aren't really above board. And so I would hate to be a coach now. Like, that would be difficult to do. I really am impressed by what you're sharing around values and things like that. And I think people would be better after coming out of Kent State, given that. I even like the deferred compensation thing. And but kids want it now, and
Until you educate.
I'm working with some young people now. I don't get any playing time. I'm gonna quit. I'm like, why would you quit? You got 3 more years to try to make it. And I'm gonna try another sport. It's just challenging. So we're talking about later in one of our programs the difference in the generations, and doing some strategic thinking about baby boomers versus Gen Z, or where people are in terms of value systems, because they're coming in with their own value system. Some of it is tied to money.
That's right.
Right? They see money as opportunity. They see money as a way to provide for their families right now who may need it. And so I see competing values in the same space, right? So you may have everybody aligned to your value system, but they may be a lower tier player.
The nature of their generation might even,
I mean, I think they're feeling the pressure too, to compete with other student athletes at other places. Like, he's starting, but he's getting paid that, and I'm getting paid more and I'm not playing as much. And he's like, I see something, is wrong here. When, I've worked at places where that's happened to me, right? So it's part of life where I can't quit and just go somewhere else. I have to figure out how to communicate my value and do something differently. But I'm just wondering what impact you think this is going to have on it all, and how you kind of anticipate what may happen as a result.
Every free market finds its balance. Every free market in a capitalistic system finds its balance. This one just hasn't found its balance yet. I mean, this isn't new, right? Equivalency sports has had this going on since equivalency sports have been around. Some kids on a full ride, some kids get calls of tennis, some kids on a partial, and they know that. They find that out, and there's opportunity for them to earn that through performance. So this isn't new. It's just new in the space of dealing with football and basketball for us. And it's a little different. Don't get me wrong. We're talking about 6 figures. Some of these young men are having opportunities to make more than 5th round draft picks, because the free market hasn't found its balance yet. So I don't look at that as a competing interest in a sense, because like building a house, your foundation still has to be something that's solid. And these young people today, they're not so different. They're looking for substance. They just understand and are educated on their value more. That's the difference. So when they come to the table, it's not because I said so. It's because they come to a table with a list of their values and they're asking why they align. So you can't hit them with some of these tropes and think they're just going to take it. They want to ask a follow-up. How does that play out in space? And what does that mean for me and my exact profile? That challenges us to have a better answer. That's fair. Well, last time I checked, again, we're on institutions of higher education. So Ty, you asked something about what if they go, counter to some of those values that you have. That's called being 18 to 22-year-olds. That's called being human beings. And again, last time I checked, we're on institutions of higher education. It's our job to educate. It's not their job just to know. Now, some of them aren't going to know, right? It's like riding a bike. Well, you had training wheels before you got up and really got going, right? So our training wheels are getting them into our system, seeing what the older players do, understanding what our culture is, because it's being behaviors that are exhibited and are modeled by the people not only on staff, but by the people who are older, right? So then it becomes, okay, they might not understand why it matters, but if they want to get the carrot, i.e. the deferred distribution, they got to go through our student athlete development programming. So now that you got to go through it, you can't just be there and not do anything, or you won't get it. And then after a while, you're going to start to pick up some of this stuff and realize how it benefits you.
Once it's repeated to you, like you said, once you start
hitting it. So now that's the training wheel. So then now they can have an opportunity to get up. Now you're not going to save everyone, because that's not life. That's not life. But those who are meant to be there will understand it, and they'll see the benefit of it. It all is, to your point, Leslie, it's about what you believe drives winning. I do not believe a foundation of transaction in our space will continually drive winning. I believe foundation, substance, really culture of togetherness, like-minded individuals for a purpose that is bigger than yourself is what truly drives consistent winning.
So I was thinking about knowing your value and the equivalency system you just talked about. And, you used to understand, I got a full ride, I'm a little better than this person's got a partial ride or whatever. But these kids are coming from a system where everybody got a trophy, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
that's
it's not based on performance. Everybody who participated. So I think they have like a warped sense of what their value is, which is why most people go into the portal and end up nowhere because I thought I could leave. And so I don't know. I'm just thinking about, do you incorporate the sense of family, because family is important to them. Sometimes providing for their family is important, which is why they're being driven by the money. So I know we're saying it's transactional, but at the end of the day, I think kids want money
for a transformational purpose, right?
Yeah.
Right. In order to transform their families' lives. So I try not to judge by saying they're chasing money. But do you incorporate the families in your culture? Is there a way to have a more wraparound approach in terms of getting buy-in from a player by working with his family, say?
Yeah. So
like
I've just 2 days ago, we had, it's transfer portal time, right? We had our NIL signing for our, freshmen. The high school kids coming out. Well, just last week, before I came out here, I was meeting with the families of people who were coming as transfers. And we talked to them about our purpose. I talked to them about mission. I talked to them about our guiding principle. I talked to them about our Ready Flash program. We talk about the why behind it. So if they have and they'll see what's the best way to really truly change the trajectory of your family. It's through generational wealth.
Absolutely.
And to have an opportunity to get a college degree is what changes the future, right? They might not understand that from the very beginning, but they will if they come and become part of our program. They'll understand it. I'm a first generation beyond measure. Neither of my parents made it past the 11th grade. Yet I'm here in front of you all, God's favorite people who cared in sports. Led me to higher education. Within higher education, developed my why. Transformational leader who has a positive impact on people's lives that resonates well beyond sports. They can have the same type of thing. I am able to model what you become. Now, why does it make sense? Because that is the Kent State story. Again, access to higher education and completion. So when we go back to what I said at the beginning, that alignment piece, so then if I'm able to then partner with coaches and then continue to educate them on that alignment and share a definition of what these things mean, they're then looking for those type of students as well to be a part of their teams. They're looking for those types of families. And then we are all sharing and modeling a different story, but it's a similar story. Now, that's not going to be your entire team. You're going to go get that receiver, that quarterback. I'm just here for the coin. Yes, that is okay, because that's part of a transaction as you're building out a team. But that's diversity in this sense.
Right. Seems like you are in a good situation.
I got a good thought about it at least, right?
And you've only been there, 2 years. And so it seems like it's a good fit.
Yes.
Have you been places, right, where your value system, the culture that you envision is not supported by the collective at the university?
Yeah.
And so what kind of tension does that create if you don't have the support? Because they want you to win. Typically, they want you to win now, right? And win fast and win a lot. And the foundation may not create that immediately because it may take some time to build that.
Yeah.
So what happens if it's not Kent State?
Yeah.
If it's somewhere where the pressure is a little bit different to produce something that's not aligned to what
how did you handle those types of things?
Go to where you're celebrating, not where you're tolerated. Go where you're celebrating, not where you're tolerated. There are things that you got to do. What's your job? Your job is to do your boss's homework. You're going to have to do the job where it's at. If it doesn't align with your system, doesn't align with your soul, your purpose, your core, at some point in time, you're going to have to transition. Now, you can't just say, just go get another job. Life don't work like that either, right? So you do the job to your level of integrity. And if it doesn't fit, at some point in time, you need to move on. I always believe in acquiring tools. A lot of people, because again, my purpose and thought process is different. A lot of people say, well, listen, if you want me to do that, you got to pay me X. I've never been that person. I want the tools. Somebody gonna pay me because I'm about to learn something. So in those situations, if it didn't align, hey, I'm not in charge. I'm not in control. I'm not going to do any line that's against my integrity or breaks a rule. However, I will let the persons in charge know that, hey, this is what I see. This is what I believe the issue is. Do you want to act? And if they choose not to act, I understand that that's where they're going. It's counter to where I'm going. So I need to acquire my tools and I need to get prepared and be ready, have that resume ready to go. So I'm going to go somewhere that it is going to align, because there's nothing more important than going to bed with a clear conscience about where you are and the impact that you're having. And again, I'm not saying that's immediate or that's easy. What I'm saying is, make sure you're getting yourself ready to be aligned with something that does feed your soul, because that's gonna have an impact for real, not something that's, again, fleeting.
Yeah.
Which is excellent. Randale, I think this has been a great conversation. It's interesting to hear your insight on the things that you've built there at Kent State and understanding preparation for jobs.
Yeah.
That didn't start at Kent State, right? Right. You've been working on these things for a long time. And I really appreciate that. I think our audience appreciate that too. So I really appreciate you joining us here on the One Question Leadership Podcast.
Happy to be here always.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see how thoughtful he's been about it already. And a lot of leaders have not thought that deep about it, really. And so they go into interviews and you ask them questions and people are looking for answers and solutions, and they have wonders and see the challenges. and folks don't have a response for it. And so, some of the work we do in terms of getting folks ready, the first time you answer these questions shouldn't be in front of the people who are judging you for it, really. It's like telling a joke. They don't really land exactly right. You think they're going to laugh, and you're like, that wasn't right.
That's right.
And so we build our business on coaching and reps and letting people say the things, let's just hear what that sounds like. People are misaligned in their own conversations. You said something here, that really don't go with what you just said right here. And so I appreciate how strategic you were in this conversation. I would like to keep talking.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, listen, at the end of the day, when it's real, you ain't got to fake it.
Yeah.
If you have a purpose that's bigger than yourself, you have an opportunity to have it. I'm not Pollyannish. I don't have some grand thing that I think things just work out. Everything's a plan. Everything's a strategy. Everything is aligned. Even with our Flash program, that's why it all comes back to what our purpose is. Because when you living on purpose, when you have your bad days, because they come, you're able to say, no, this is bigger than that. I need to keep going. And I'll stand behind that. There's always progress and hope. And then when you see the results, she's like, oh my God, this definitely does fully work. Other people pick it up. Now you have an impact on the world, and that's what really matters.
Yeah.
Which is excellent. I really appreciate you joining us here on 1Q. You too, Leslie, thank you for joining as a co-host. That was Randale Richmond. He's the Director of Athletics at Kent State, and Leslie Satchel, who's the Executive Director of Stretch. And of course, I am Ty Brown with one question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today. This episode of the One Question Leadership Podcast is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.